Surangama Sutra. Introduction. The Surangama Sutra is a comprehensive Mahayana Buddhist guidebook that leads readers to spiritual enlightenment along a path described in Shakyamuni Buddha's most advanced teachings. It details at some length the understandings, practices, and pitfalls aspiring bodhisattvas must be conscious of in walking this path. Because of its practicality and thoroughness, it was often the first major text that newly ordained Chan monks were asked to study in medieval and early modern China. The sutra is less well known in the West than other Mahayana sutras because it is difficult to understand without an accomplished teacher. Only partial and substandard translations of the text into Western languages were available until recently. It is of disputed authenticity, and it is very long and lacks the charismatic imagery of other long Mahayana sutras, such as the Avatamsaka Sutra. Nevertheless, it was a seminal text in the formation of Chan Buddhism, especially during the Tang through Ming dynasties. Because of its influence on the development of Chan Buddhism and subsequently Zen Buddhism, it warrants critical attention by contemporary Zen practitioners. This primer reviews the origin and history of the sutra, its storyline, and its teachings, at least some of which are considered atypical of traditional Buddhism. Origin and brief history. The first mention of the sutra occurs in two catalogues published by Zisheng, a Chinese monk, in 730 CE. Since the two accounts of the origin and translation of the sutra differ, it remains unclear who made the original translation and from which Sanskrit text or texts, if any, it was translated from. Both translations were said to have taken place in about 705 CE. Because an original Sanskrit copy of the sutra has not been found, and the unusual teachings in the text, what are called by some non-Buddhist teachings, it is the opinion of many that it is a Buddhist apocrypha. In contrast, Ron Epstein, a supporter of the originality of the sutra, concludes that, quote, "It seems likely that the origin of the great bulk of material in the sutra is Indic, though it is obvious that the text was edited in China." Close quote. Regardless of the origins of the sutra, it was widely studied and the focus of over 100 commentaries by Chan practitioners. The sutra continues to be a primary text within Chan Buddhism today, though, except in Korea, it never became a particularly important text in other areas of East and Southeast Asia, perhaps because it was considered created in China by Chinese authors. The story and its teachings. The Surangama Sutra concerns the realizations, practices, and pitfalls that must be understood in walking the path to enlightenment as taught by Shakyamuni Buddha in the time of the Dharma's ending. These teachings center on a dialogue between the Buddha and his cousin Ananda. For summary purposes, the story as it unfolds is divided here into a prologue and 10 parts. As advanced readers will discern, the sutra contains doctrinal elements of Yogacara, Madhyamika, and esoteric Buddhism, and an evolving interpretation of Buddha nature. The Prologue. As the sutra opens, the Buddha is at a banquet hosted by King Prasenajit in the city of Sravasti at the conclusion of a summer retreat. Over 1,000 great monks are in attendance, along with lay people, all of whom desire counsel with the Buddha to resolve questions about the path to true awakening. Only Ananda, the Buddha's cousin, is absent. He had traveled earlier through the city to accept a special invitation, and on his return, while passing a house of courtesans, becomes entrapped in a spell by a young woman who intends to seduce him. The Buddha, knowing from afar that Ananda was under a spell, quickly returned to his monastic grounds. Seating himself, the Buddha made appear from the crown of his head the image of a seated Buddha who recited a spiritually powerful mantra, the Surangama mantra. The Buddha then sends Manjushri, an advanced bodhisattva, to protect Ananda with the power of the mantra and to bring him and the young woman back to where the Buddha resides. In the prologue, one learns that enlightened people are free from outflows, the outflows of desire, existence, and ignorance. Monks whose samadhi or deep mental absorption is not yet strong should always travel at least in pairs to avoid temptations. Monks should not accept special invitations, but accompany other members of the Sangha. How and where to accept alms during one's alms round. And that the Surangama mantra is the king of mantras, though the content of the mantra itself is not yet revealed in the sutra.